The life and journey of Ahsoka Tano is perhaps one of the most compelling and thoroughly developed character arcs within all of Star Wars, following the young Togruta throughout her trials as a Jedi Padawan, her exile by her own order, and her survival under the Empire, eventually leading her beyond the collapse of Palpatine's regime and into the age of the New Republic. This makes Ahsoka one of the only characters to bridge the gap between the Clone Wars and the Age of the Empire, as well as the era of the New Republic, a feat which is exceedingly rare in the Star Wars universe. Throughout her life, she survived numerous events which should have reasonably killed her, including fending off the clone attack of Order 66, as well as facing the might of Darth Vader himself in single combat. Very few Jedi have ever been able to walk away from just one of these events in one piece, but Ahsoka is one of just a select few confirmed Jedi to have done both. Upon further analysis, however, we can clearly see just how her training under Anakin prepared her for both of these events, and given the recent trailer for Tales of the Jedi, we now seemingly know exactly what Anakin did that allowed her to survive these two particularly deadly encounters. So today, acolytes and students of the Force, let's discuss how Anakin prepared Ahsoka for these two encounters, and point out the exact moments in her training which she utilized later down the line for her own survival. Let us begin with Order 66, the single darkest hour for the Jedi Order as a whole. In the new Tales of the Jedi trailer, we get to see a flashback to Ahsoka's early days alongside Anakin and Obi-Wan, and one particular scene showcases her being surrounded by clones, each of whom have their blasters set to stun and aimed at Ahsoka. We can hear the voiceover of Anakin telling her to try and try again, being stunned every time and eventually going down. Yet Anakin demands that she get back up and try yet again. His forceful demeanor seems to indicate that during his early days as a mentor, he may very well have pushed Ahsoka to her near limits, and been a much more blunt master, different than his later interactions with the young Padawan. When Ahsoka and Anakin were first introduced to one another, we know that they weren't entirely fond of one another until much later, clashing at the beginning at the war and having several public disagreements. After they began to bond on the battlefield and develop a connection with one another, however, they began to progress further and further as master and apprentice. But playing this scene alongside the events of Order 66 seems to showcase some stark similarities. The resemblance is rather uncanny, showcasing Ahsoka surrounded by the clones in a very similar setting. Is it possible that during Order 66, Ahsoka's instincts brought her back to this specific encounter and training session with the clone, being surrounded on all sides and having to deflect live fire from every direction at once? Ahsoka had to be on a constant 360-degree swivel, blocking and deflecting fire from everywhere at once, which during Order 66 we learned that many Jedi were incapable of. Even seasoned Jedi masters like Ki-Adi-Mundi and Depa Billaba were unable to fend off against the onslaught of the clones for very long, even though they were able to deflect several rounds before ultimately falling. While some Jedi like Plo Koon, Aayla Secura, and many others were completely caught off guard and never had a chance to defend themselves, a few were able to hold out for a couple of few brief seconds. Ahsoka, however, outperformed all of them and ultimately survived, likely thanks to this specific exercise that Anakin had her continue to practice for an unspecified amount of time. Next though, let's explore how Anakin actually may have trained Ahsoka to face down the might of Darth Vader, who very few Jedi were able to stand up against without perishing. Not only did Ahsoka survive her encounter with Vader, but she severely wounded him and nearly killed the Dark Lord. One could argue that she got the closest to killing Vader out of just about anyone, as a strike just a few inches to the side or the other would have been a clean cleave through Anakin's head, which lay just beneath the Durasteel helmet. But she was able to do this despite never completing her Jedi training and only having a few years of practice under her belt. Many of the Jedi that Vader killed had decades of experience, were seasoned Jedi masters and war veterans, which leaves us to wonder, how was Ahsoka able to stand up to Vader? How could she outperform all of these masters on both of these occasions? The answer lies within Anakin and the Clone Wars itself. Throughout the age of the Clone Wars, several different styles of enemies plagued the battlefield, from Dooku's unmatched prowess and elegance with a blade, to Maul's brute veracity and the acrobatic swarm that was the Sith assassin known as Ventress. interest. While each of these enemies had a specific style of practice that had to be trained against, one particular opponent was also a highly renowned Jedi butcher of his generation. One mechanical behemoth marched through the battlefield, instilling fear in any Jedi that came across him, and using this moment of terror and hesitation to strike fear into his quivering opponents. We are talking, of course, about General Grievous, who largely served as a prototype for Darth Vader in a number of ways. After his dismemberment at the hands of Obi-Wan, Palpatine took Anakin to a secure Separatist facility known for creating Grievous's mechanical augmentations. It was in fact the very same technology that created Grievous's cybernetics that saved Vader's life, as well as confined him to his iconic life support suit, and thus created a few stark similarities between Grievous and Vader. This augmented both their strength as well as their durability, as Vader served as Grievous's successor in a number of ways. They also both used the principal tactic of terror and brute force to march through their opposition, and they largely succeeded in killing Jedi by employing similar tactics to one another. Anakin, however, knew of General Grievous during his days as a Jedi general, and he likewise knew that by sending Ahsoka into the line of fire with Grievous, she may very well come across him one-on-one. We know that early in her career, she was narrowly surviving an encounter with Grievous, but later in her training, she was able to contend with him relatively handily, not becoming overwhelmed by fear. This tells us that Anakin specifically trained her on the most effective ways to fight opponents who were bigger and stronger than she was, as her stature served as one of her most prolific disadvantages, as well as advantages throughout her life. Though Ahsoka was strong and incredibly athletic, many of her opponents were simply beyond her weight class, and she had to learn how to contend with foes who were much larger than her, including General Grievous. This likely means that when it came with her face down with Vader, she drew on her experience against the Separatist general and was able to hold her ground, as Vader employed many of the same tactics of fear as Grievous, although on a much larger and more terrifying level. We also know that Anakin Skywalker taught Ahsoka Jar Kai, despite never employing this himself, as we see both of his apprentices use this iconic backhanded grip with incredible success. We even hear Anakin say that the best way to protect her is to teach her how to protect herself, including being prepared for the likes of Grievous showing up at a moment's notice, ready for a fight, and it seems as if Anakin did just that. In a way, Anakin Skywalker not only saved Ahsoka Tano from Order 66, but also from Darth Vader himself, and it was Anakin's training that prepared her so well. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this analysis? Do you think that these are the reasons Ahsoka was able to survive both Order 66 and Darth Vader? Was it all due to her training under Anakin Skywalker? And, in a way, a roundabout way in the Force, did Anakin save Ahsoka? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. May the Force be with you, and I hope that you have a great day.